Halo 5 comes under controversy for lack of split screen and false advertising during an episode of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., and Congress expands the fair use rights regarding video game preservation. What do these stories mean for you? My name is Mooseman, and today I am finally back to tell you what is going on in this week's episode of Gaming News Weekly. Halo 5 launched earlier this week and has come under some controversy regarding the removal of all split screen capability in order to ensure the game can maintain 60 frames per second. While the lack of split screen has been known for some time, earlier this month an episode of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. was shown with the game playing in split screen mode, suggesting that the mode was in the game originally but removed sometime between filming of the episode and the launch of the game. Split screen gaming is something that I rarely care about on PC due to the single user nature of the PC, but on console the lack of split screen, especially in a Halo game, is something that I'm going to criticize heavily. One of the primary benefits of having a console is that it is designed around being played on a couch with a big TV and, most importantly, with other people. Lack of split screen in Halo 5 is especially disappointing because Halo's popularity and reputation as a series grew as a result of split screen multiplayer back in the days of Halo Combat Evolved and Halo 2 on the original Xbox. There is a huge culture of split screen gaming that developed around the game, and removing this feature from the game, even in an attempt to improve the performance and quality of the game, is something that I find unacceptable. But the removal of split screen and the general downgrade of visual fidelity in Halo 5 to maintain 60 frames per second is actually just a symptom of a greater problem in that the Xbox One and to a lesser degree the PlayStation 4 are too weak to keep up with what gamers have come to expect when being compared to PC gaming. Gamers are pushing heavily for 60 frames per second to become the standard, but it's also a standard that needs to be reached without sacrificing core gameplay elements. The concessions made to get Halo, a AAA first-party flagship title, run at 60 frames per second on Microsoft's own console is absolutely pitiful, and it shows that software innovations aren't enough to keep up with the low-end hardware. One of the most important things about the last generation of consoles was that developers were able to get better and better at optimizing their games around the hardware to create games that looked and performed better over the lifespan of the Xbox 360 and PS3. While it's not for certain that new techniques and optimization methods won't be discovered later on in this generation of consoles, especially with the launch of DirectX 12, Halo should be a game that is a trendsetter and not an example of console inferiority. The Library of Congress earlier this week expanded on the fair use rights of gamers regarding the reviving of games that are unplayable due to authentication servers being turned off. One thing we take for granted in this age of gaming is that we have access to the collected libraries of all the previous generations of games right at our fingertips. You can easily and mostly legally set up an emulator for almost every console game dating up to the Wii, with Xbox 360 and PS3 emulators becoming better and better every day. However, with the prevalence of online authentication due to DRM or games being created in a way that restricts them to being always online, that may not be the case in the future without legislation such as this. While we think of Steam, Xbox Live, and PSN as being highly successful and unlikely to shut down anytime soon, someday in the future these services will cease to exist, and having a legal way to preserve games now is an essential step to ensuring that this new digital era of games survives into the future without physical copies. While it's rare to see a game today becoming unplayable due to servers going offline, MMOs are actually a unique scenario where this is already happening, with games like Star Wars Galaxies and City of Heroes being completely unplayable without someone cracking the game and setting up a private server to host the game. With this legislation passed, it should be legal for those working on restoring MMOs and other online-only games to set up the servers necessary to return them to a working state. This legislation, however, only covers games like MMOs that require an online connection to be played at all. So if a game can be played offline in any way, that game is not covered under this new legislation and cannot currently be legally brought back. This is where the law needs to be expanded or changed, as there are plenty of games available that have offline single-player modes that can still be played, but still cannot legally have private servers set up for their defunct multiplayer. Thank you for watching this week's episode of Gaming News Weekly, which is now back and will be covering all gaming news instead of just PC news. If you would like to see more, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel, where I do reviews, news, and other gaming commentary.